The initiative was something from the Behavioral and Mental Health Advisory Council that we decided that we needed to do something to be part of the solution of what can we do to help people and to ease the suffering. So we began brainstorming ideas of how can we show up as a council to help support our members, people in the post-acute and long-term care settings. And we came up with the idea of a webinar series that we hosted across a series of months with a variety of different topics. On the AMDA website is a web page, the Healing Together Initiative, that offers a host of resources and all of the recordings from the webinar series and tools and all sorts of things that will help us in our nursing homes that we can share with our colleagues, with our interdisciplinary teams, and sometimes I think even with families and residents. Yeah, so the way that you find the resources is on paltc.org, and there's an entire webpage dedicated to the initiative, and on there you'll find links to all of the past recordings of our webinar series, resources, tools, handouts, white papers, research. There's all sorts of information on there that people can download. And what's really important about this webinar series and the entire initiative is that it's free and it's open to the public. So it's not just for nursing home staff, it's not just for AMDA members, it's for the entire continuum across all of our settings, from assisted living, post-acute and long-term care, continuing care, including our families and residents. As I was thinking about what is it we could really do to help ease the suffering that all of us are feeling, there's a few things that come to mind. So much of it comes around the issue of empathy. Empathy is the ability to listen very deeply to another person, what they are feeling and what they are needing at that moment. So much of what the webinar series was around, even though if the speaker didn't specifically say empathy, so much of what this is about is being present with another person in their grief, in their suffering, in their moment of struggle. And it's acknowledging and recognizing that. We have a tendency, and we are socialized across the board to want to reassure people. Oh, it's okay, it's going to get better. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Or we tend to want to give advice to people. Well, if you'd only think of it this way. With empathy, it's very different. With empathy, we are sitting and being quiet, a quiet listening presence. And that's one of the things that we can all do a better job and increase our ability, our emotional intelligence around being present with someone when they're struggling. Other things when people are suffering is being aware of trauma and trauma-informed care. So of course we know in our nursing homes we have a mandate that not really sure when it will come into effect because the pandemic derailed some of those regulations that were part of that 2016 overhaul. But trauma-informed care is going to be coming up, I think, very quickly in the sense of, are we creating cultures that are trauma-informed and trauma-informed care practices and principles? For example, do we create safe environments where people can feel at ease to talk and to share and to be present? And trauma-informed care, while it's a regulation, I believe it's FTAG 699, it's not just for residents and patients, it's for all of us, that we have to create these trauma-informed care cultures for staff, for all of us that live, work, and actually play in our nursing homes. So the principles of trauma-informed care, along with empathy, along with bringing our CNAs, we've heard so much throughout many different venues, and of course the conference, is that we need to bring our CNAs and have all of our voices heard at every meeting, at every table. So those are some of the bigger takeaways. That we are truly in this together. That I think that as human beings, no matter if we are medical directors, medical providers, administrators, CNAs, DON, social workers, pharmacists, activity staff, therapists, no matter what our degree, our role, our title, our experience it is, that as a collective, we are in this together and we need to heal together. And that if we commit to looking at these strategies and supporting one another and not simply looking for that light at the end of the tunnel, but actually sitting and staying present at times with the grief and the suffering and the mourning, to verbalize it, to name it, to talk about it. Those are the things that we need to focus on to help us actually begin the healing process, to not skim over it and look for post-pandemic, the experience of getting through it. We need to sit through it, we need to talk about it and be present with it. Create time and space, I think, for it. So as human beings, stories are one of the ways we communicate. Back, of course, thousands of years ago, before there was really a way to carry forth a written word, so to speak, stories are how we communicate. Stories are what happens at the dinner table. Stories are what happens when we go home from work and we tell our partners or spouses or children or whatever our family constellation is, what was my day like? What happened? And I'm going to listen. That stories are the ability to share, to honor, to connect with another human being. And people in nursing homes and assisted living communities, boy, we have a lot of stories to share. And if we can just create safe spaces for those, and it doesn't have to be hours on end, it can be informal, popping up, tell me about your day, what's your story today? I'd like to listen to you. It can be more formal ways of telling stories and sharing and listening. It can be times that we set aside and actually make it part of our agendas in our nursing homes, in our assisted living communities, that we can actually create space and time to share our stories with each other, because in the stories begins the healing. I think just acknowledge how grateful that I think with all the pain and the suffering that this pandemic has unearthed, it's been very difficult. We've all witnessed incredible grief and sadness and the deaths and loss and changes of our residents, patients, families, and ourselves. And I would like to share with all of my colleagues and people across this country, and broader than just this country, to say we can and we will get through this together, that we have our stories, we have our collective humanity, and with empathy, we can find our way through this and emerge, I think, as more compassionate and loving people, which to me is the essence of why we are doing all of this together as healthcare staff in any discipline, any role.